7, so we got a lot of numbers to go through, so go ahead and call this workshop to order. We recording, Scott?
Yes, sir.
We're live broadcasting? Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and call the workshop to order. Joe, you want to go ahead and get started? Or you want to just bring Stella up, or?
Oh, we'll jump right to Stella. We'll get into the last workshop. We went over the enterprise funds. Tonight, we're going to go over the general fund and the other governmental funds, special revenues, et cetera. Do you need to call a roll? Call a roll?
Sure, I guess we call the roll. Scott?
One of the mayors have to remember.
Penny Curry. John Penny.
Here.
Chris Villa.
Here.
Roy Johnson.
Here.
Sorry, I'm not saying Commissioner. Commissioner Danio.
Here. Thank you.
Okay. You ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Stella Gurnay, Finance Director. Tonight, as Joe said, we're going to be going over the general fund and governmental funds for the recommended budget for next year. First, I'd like to thank the department heads and their staff. As you all know, this has been the difficult budget planning because of the pandemic. So I really want to thank them because they came together and really assisted in getting this budget done. And we do have a balanced budget in all of the funds. So the first slide is just a reminder. This workbook that you have is laid out. The first part is the PowerPoint presentation, and the back part is a very detailed worksheet that goes through all the department line items. And so this first page gives you an example of the worksheet, and it's just the same example that we did in the last budget workshop. Just primarily point out that the purple column is the column for the fiscal year that we're talking about, the 2021 fiscal year, and the text associated with that purple goes with that column. And then, of course, the other columns are labeled there for you. In general, we're looking at a 20 to 25% decline in state revenues, and there have been some of the estimates posted this week, and they are coming in around $1,000, $2,000 or $3,000 from what we estimated, so they are 20 to 25% decrease compared to what they originally were this year. Also,
Stella, when you prepared
yes.
the budget, did you use the 20 or the 25, or did you use an average, or how did you determine that?
The different revenue, we looked at what was coming in to date and how much had decreased since COVID started. So one revenue may be 20%, one may be 18%,
Okay.
one may be 25%. So each one of them was analyzed independently.
Thank you.
And okay. And then also next year, we have the third year of the rate study, and the union contracts had wage increases, and they are about 4 to 5% on average.
That's union and non-union, the total.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So the next slide looks at the general fund revenue and expenses for the last several years and projected for this year and into next year. I will say that the current fiscal year does include $469,000 in carryover projects. That's why the expenses are showing higher than the revenue. And next fiscal year, we'll be talking, of course, in a lot more detail about that. So the next slide shows the net increase or decrease to fund balance, the general fund balance over the last several years. 2017, I think everybody remembers that was the Hurricane Matthew year. That's why there was a sharp decline there. And again, we already, for this year, talked about the projection, including projects that we had carried over from the previous year. Okay, this slide goes into looking at comparing the original budget for this year to the proposed budget for next year. Now, this original budget has not been adjusted for those revenue declines, but the proposed one has. So I wanted to give you a comparison of where we started out this year into what we're talking about next year. So the ad valorem, of course, is the property tax. Other taxes are your state revenue, utility taxes, permits and fees. We're projecting that to go down because our building activity has not been as much this year as we anticipated. State share revenues, of course, we've already talked about that. Charges for service and other remaining flat. And then the appropriated equity or use of fund balance is what it means. As I was talking earlier, very early in my career, a very long-term city manager gave me a piece of advice as far as budget. He said, never use one-time revenue, which fund balances are one-time revenue, for ongoing, reoccurring operating expense, because that will get you in the hole quicker than anything. So we are suggesting to use that appropriated equity or fund balance for capital projects, and we'll see that as we go through here. The next slide is just...
Mr. Vice Chairman, I have a question for Stella.
Okay.
Can you say again why the permits and fees are proposed at $210,000 less than last year again? I just didn't hear that.
Yes, in our last workshop, we talked about that some. The building activity that we have projected for this year, we are just not seeing it come in. We had anticipated, for instance, that there was going to be more D.R. Horton houses.
We had
the apartment
the
complex.
apartment complex at 3rd Street that we were projecting coming in, but that wasn't awarded the Florida Housing Tax Credits, so that project did not go through. The phases 2 and 3 of D.R. Horton have not come through yet, although they are trying to get entitlements for that. So I don't know if that's going to be in next year's revenues or the following year's revenues. So it's a projection, Mayor. So we put our projections in based on the information that we have at the time. And then if the economy or the development world changes, we have to move with whatever direction that is.
Okay.
Anything else?
Nope, thank you.
Okay, we can go to the next one, Scott. In this slide, I'm trying to show you how your revenue pie is split up. As you see, ad valorem's about 36%. And even that revenue, you only have limited control over. You can control the millage rate, but the state caps it. And also, of course, the property appraiser, what he appraises the property at, you have to go by what he does. And then the front 3 pieces of the pie, the orange, the gray, and the yellow, those are also all revenues that the state either limits or defines how much they are. And then the last thing that I want to point out to you is the dark gray revenue, the admin fees at 14%. Those are not external revenues. Those are just transfers from other funds into the general fund to pay for services that the general fund provides. So you can see well over half of your revenue is limited by the state, and you for the general fund, and you don't have much control except for setting the millage rate. Okay. So when we get to the regular meeting tonight, we are proposing, and we built this budget on a 6.25 mil rate, which is the same rate as last year. In general, the average property values increased about 6.2%. So what this chart does is give you an example of the difference that someone would pay if they had, let's just look at the $50,000 one, $50,000 taxable value with a $50,000 exemption this year compared to the property increase and a $50,000 increase for the upcoming year. So you'll see that $50,000 taxable value this year, of course, would pay nothing because they have the exemption. And then next year, if it went up 6.2%, they would be paying an extra $19.38. So you can look at each one of those categories. Same thing with the commercial property who don't get the $50,000 exemption. Let's just look at the $250,000 value commercial property. Right now, they're paying $1,562 for their annual property tax. If their property value increased by the average, they would be paying $1,659 in the new year that we're proposing. Also, the rollback rate is 5.9014, and the city manager asked me a question earlier that I will share with you. If for some reason we went to the rollback rate versus the 6.25, it would be a $167,000 decline in revenue for the general fund and a $67,000 decline in revenue for the CRA fund. So a total of $234,000. And also, just a reminder, tonight is your maximum millage. You can always go down from tonight it'll be in your regular meeting when you set this, but you can always go down from whatever you set tonight. Go ahead to the next slide. So the next slide just details out the departments and their actual expenses for 1920 original budget and the proposed for the 2021. In the non-departmental, the spike you see in 19, there was 1.8 that was transferred to the capital project fund for capital projects, so that's why there's the big spike there. And then the next slide just details out by department and gives you the actual numbers for each department.
I want to just back you up one
Okay.
slide, Stella.
Okay.
And if you look at the chart, with the exception of the non-departmental last year with the anomaly of almost $2 million in capital improvement projects, public safety is the majority of the cost of the operations of the city. So now if you go to the current page that you were going to, which shows the general fund 2021 budget, and you look at the proposed 2021 proposed budget in the right column, your police and fire departments combined make up $4 million of expenditures. And if you go back to, well, you don't have to go back, but I'll just remind you that your ad valorem revenue is under $3 million. So ad valorem taxes alone are $1 million short just to fund public safety of police and fire. So I just want to call that to your attention.
And while we're talking about police and fire, the difference in several of the departments, but specifically police had a bigger impact, and the commission budget, is in the 2021 budget, we're putting the insurance cost back into the functional areas where they occur. So the police have a special insurance program that they have to have, the police liability something or other, and so does the elected officials. So that accounts for $50,000 in the police department budget, where before it was down in non-departmental. And then the fire budget, the story there is, or the reality is, the pension. The pension actuarial report requires that we put another $108,000 in pension in the new year.
Stella, how were you able to cut $60,000 out of your finance department? Everything else, slight tweaks here and there, but yours is $64,000 less.
Okay, I have notes on that. It was primarily in salary and benefits. We reorganized the department. We now have a couple of part-time positions when there was full-time positions there. So, and that's primarily where it's all coming from, salary and benefits.
You're not cutting your department short with the reorganization?
No, I don't think so, no.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, the next one talks about the transfers into the capital projects fund. And of course, they're listed out here. If you want any more detail, I'll be glad to call Antoine up here. There is a couple of things. The city manager did have me add the body camera system for the PD.
Now, that camera system is about $140,000 over a 5-year period. It's an annual cost of $41,000. I think it gets a little bit less each year.
A little less next year. The original cost is more
For the capital equipment that you're actually buying, the equipment that the officers will wear. We have our 3 police vehicles in here, and we want to try to maintain that purchase of those vehicles to stay on course. Otherwise, in a couple of years from now, instead of buying 3 vehicles, we're going to have to buy 6 vehicles. The roof on the clubhouse is due to be changed out. The commission chambers refurbishment, if you sit in any of these seats, you'll see that the material is starting to literally tear, and dust and product is coming out of it because these are now getting close to 20 years old. I guess it's 1998. It's no sooner than that, 94, 95 when this was built. So it's quite old. There's a bridge that connects North and South Sunrise Park that we talked about that is in desperate need of replacement. So that's estimated at $150,000. We're going to be talking about that and the remaining part of that at a work session, which is the nature trail, which is very in large disrepair that we need to consider whether or not we're going to repair that or just eliminate it. Improvements at Seca Hall. Not necessarily, I would say, is a mandatory thing. That's an option if you're looking to remove anything. The grant for the fire department hardening, that $66,000 is a match in anticipation that we'll be able to get a grant to reskin that building. And we need to try to stay on course with our monies going into the reserve for the fire truck and the radio replacements for public service. So there's not a lot of items, even in the capital budget, that I could say you could postpone anymore. Some of these things just simply need to be purchased to keep the operations moving forward.
Hey, Joe, quick question. Sorry, Vice Mayor. The Veterans Memorial flagpole out front, is that not in here for a reason?
We're going to get to
somewhere else?
that in a couple of pages, Mayor. Sit tight.
All right,
It's
thank
in
you.
there, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're good. And that completes the general fund section of tonight. The next fund is the fuel tax fund. And you'll see that, of course, it's going down drastically from the original budget of this year, but let me remind you what was in the original budget of this year. We had the $200,000 mobility fee that came from the solid waste fund. We also were planning a $300,000 loan, which we did not do because the cost came in cheaper than we anticipated. We may still have to do a little bit of loan when we get at the end of the fiscal year to make sure we've got the money covered. We're trying to wait to see how much the actual state revenue is that comes in there. And then 140,000 was scheduled to be tax revenue, but that's where we're going to have a shortfall that we have to watch. So in next fiscal year, what we've suggested or programmed is still the $200,000 mobility fee from the solid waste fund and $125,000 in tax revenue. That's the decline we're talking about. And then there's just $5,000 for miscellaneous and interest earnings. Good with that one? Okay. The next fund is the building fund, and we've already talked some about why the revenues are down. So we do have the revenues from building permits going down by 30-some thousand dollars, which means we do have to transfer more funds from the general fund to cover the normal cost in this fund. So the total is $326,000, and the expenses are primarily salary and benefits, a little over $300,000, and then operating expense. The next are all the impact fee funds. I kind of did them on one slide. I do need to make one correction to this slide. The police impact fee fund actually has $4,000 revenue and expense in the current year budget, so I made a typo there. We are suggesting $6,100 for next year based on what we've actually gotten year to date. The fire impact fee fund, also next year we're suggesting $2,815, again based on what we've gotten year to date in the current fiscal year. The road impact fee fund down a little bit from our budget this year at $10,155. And then the park impact fee fund, the reason last year was $47,000 was that we did use $44,000 of the reserve or fund balance to fund the Ross Point bathroom. So that's why there's such a decline, and we're recommending $1,700 for next year.
Stella, can we jump back one page to the building department,
Sure,
salaries and benefits?
sure.
With the recent changes in staff there, do we still expect that salary and benefit to increase?
The salary,
Or are those old numbers? I know we've had some changes, some staff changes in that department.
right, but you still, the only staff, and it's been factored in there, is the coordinator position that the change that would be less. You've got I don't believe last year had a full year of the building official. I believe we're using contract, or the current year, contract services. So then now that we have the building official on for the full year,
Okay,
that impact's going to make it go up.
thanks.
Okay, so, yeah. And then the next fund is the Police Explorers Fund, and it was $3,800 the current year, and we're just suggesting $4,200 for next year. Then the CRA fund. So the current year, Avalorm was $1.1 million, and at 6.25 it would be $1.2 million for next year. The intergovernmental revenues are the revenues from the county, the hospital, the other taxing district that we get TIF money from. And then other is miscellaneous expense and fund balance, and I can't remember if that one did use fund balance or not. I can look real quick. Yes, we are recommending $65,000 come out of our fund balance for that fund. And then in the expenses, we have the police department expenses, which there has been reorganization regarding that, so those expenses did go down. And the Pictona, now we have an operating department in there for Pictona to cover the utilities and for them to manage the center for us over there. And then the administrative department, of course, is the Economic Development CRA manager, which I understand we've now hired
Well, an offer is out.
or offered. And then the non-departmental, 100,000 of that is designated, for the pickleball project. And actually, right now, we do have contingency in that fund, which I didn't think about it till right now. We could do away with the 65,000 of fund balance because we have over 800,000 of contingency sitting there right now.
Still, on the CRA administration, it's a $75,000 increase. Is that because the 2020, this is original budget. I know we have a vacancy there. That's,
Correct?
that 390 is budgeted, not actual, correct?
That 390 was budget, correct. So let me look real quick on the detail. Let's see if I can tell you more where it is.
Vice Mayor, I have a question next as well.
Okay. Salary and benefits just went up around 7,000, so that's not a lot. Legal services, we did increase that to 56,000, which is about 26,000 up, which match our year-to-date cost for that. So that was one of the areas. And repairs and maintenance, we have an additional $6,000 in there. And the items that they have are Riverside Park repairs for $4,000, US 1 bus shelter for $6,000, US 1 median trees for $6,000. As you know, we keep getting trees knocked down in the median.
Right, but I'm just looking at, I might be looking at this incorrectly. I'm just looking at the administration, CRA administration.
Well,
That's not salary.
that's not just salary. That's operating expense
Okay,
also.
okay, all right, thank you. Okay, that.
So that's
clears it up.
good?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a question too.
Mayor, I have a
Yeah,
question.
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. Hey, Joe, I can't find the line item here in in our budget, but just quick question. Pictona, 122,000. Does that include landscape maintenance and ground maintenance there for the part that we're supposed to take care of outside of the fence?
Well, 100,000 of that is the balance of the 1.3 million that we're contributing. The other amount is the salary that we're paying toward, that we pay toward the salaries and some of the other benefits that we're matching with Florida Healthcare. Then we have a line item in there where we are taking responsibility. It's in the landscape agreement that we have with now ABC, was with Vertigro for the landscaping of that. We also have to include utility costs and water costs that are going to be funded out of that the CRA will be paying for. So that Pictona cost is not all of what the city's going to be putting toward Pictona.
So the Pictona costs are on page 77 of your worksheet, Mayor, the detail worksheet, for that department operating cost. But as Joe said, there's also an additional 100,000 that are in the non-departmental area that we will have to pay out related to that project. So not all of the costs related to that project are in that department called Pictona. That's just the operating part of the cost.
Yeah, so Pictona operations come out of the total CRA budget and not a specific Pictona line item.
Okay, perfect. You found that very, very quick, Stella. Impressive.
I numbered the pages this time, I remembered.
Commissioner Danio?
What was that?
No, my question was, I guess, kind of answered. I was wondering, that's $10,000 a month for, you said something about utilities, and Pictona, I'm thinking $10,000 a month, that seemed awful high.
Yeah, this is not the total. We're in two
The
different.
total utilities is $12,000
Yeah.
for the year.
Yeah, gotcha, yeah. Well, what you said, I thought you said something about utilities for $122,000, I'm like, what?
No.
Okay,
Oh, that's just one piece of,
got it, yep, okay,
okay, are we good now?
yep.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'll go on to the next one. And this is the Fountainhead Incentive Fund. This is money we're carrying over for that incentive program. Now, actually, the budget, when I bring the final one to you, will go down because they are finally receiving, at least I think it's this area that it comes out of, Joe, a payment reimbursement for some of their expenses should be later this week.
Yeah, I turned the page. They'll be getting back their TIF monies, which is only about $10,000, but once they get their CO, which will, in my opinion, might more than likely be after the October 1 deadline, that'll be the employee incentive, which comes out of the purchase money, which is what this is sitting in reserve for, and that's probably going to be close to $300,000.
Okay.
So the 2020 revenue is carryover from when they purchased it
Right.
in 2018. That's not actual 2020 revenue, that's carryover.
That's fund balance.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's been no additional revenue since the
Okay.
purchase in 2017.
right. Okay. And then the next is the CRA project fund. And this, of course, is where the pickleball project is coming out of. So you'll see that the $100,000 is coming over into this fund, and we started out, I think originally, a couple of years ago, at over $2 million for that project, Joe?
For
Pickleball.
$1 million, 1.3 was the original.
Okay. So the US one was also in there.
And yeah, you had US 1 overhead underground
Yeah,
project.
yeah. Okay. And then the next fund is the 301, or the General Capital Projects Fund. And we've already talked about this when we were over in the general fund, so I'm just going to have you flip to the next one because it gives them more detail. These are the projects that were in 2019 and 2020. There have been a couple that were delayed, and Mayor, this is where the flagpole, Veterans Flagpole and Circle is. It's under a delayed project for $50,000. So the budget is still sitting out there in the current year, and it will be carried over into the new year unless you guys tell us we're not doing that and we're not carrying it over. Also delayed was the Public Works building, and then the projects at top, some of them are done and some of them are still being worked on. I don't know if you want any updates on any particular ones.
Yes, Vice Mayor, just for clarification, the ones up top, are all of those complete now or underway?
No, they're not complete. The City Hall roof is complete, the Dog Fanches roof is complete, the Public Work Admin roof is complete, the YMCA repairs is complete, the Ross Point bathrooms was just completed, Fitness Park in Sunrise Park is done, the boat ramp is completed, north and south. The pedestrian bridge is not yet completed, and that's the one on Riverside Drive. And then the ERP upgrade, that's the computer program, that's money still sitting there for other expansions of the computer software program.
Sunrise Park North is the wall.
Oh, Sunrise Park, oh, the boat ramp, all right, that's complete. The Sunrise Park, that's the seawall, and that is not done, and that's, again, that's a FEMA reimbursement item. Thanks, Antoine.
Anything else, Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. No, sir.
Okay. The next slide just repeats what we just talked about in the general fund. So this is the transfer coming into the capital projects fund, so it's all the same projects. Okay, and then the next slide is the information technology fund. A reminder that there are no external revenues for this fund. The operating funds pay in to this fund to support their operating expenses. So looking at the new proposed fiscal year, there was an annual amount of $40,000 that didn't get put in the original budget this year that we had to do budget transfers for the new phone system. So that it repeats again in next year. So that's one of the items that went up. And then if you go to the next slide, it gives you the capital projects that Scott is suggesting for this year for a total of $35,400.
So,
The,
I just had a couple questions. Laptops, $3,500, that's, is that normal for laptops?
For the cops, the ones in the police officers.
where,
Big money, huh?
Which one are you talking about?
I was like,
PD laptop.
I had
Oh, the
just a
2
question
PD.
mark, because I thought, wow, that's, I mean, they're sophisticated equipment that runs that high, huh?
yeah, those are the tough books.
There's-
Yeah, they're the tough books. They're running probably about $2,400 a piece right now. And then you have the signature pads that go with them and other ancillary things.
Okay.
The other thing, just a quick modification, the fiber replacement to the fire department is probably going to be projected out at $17,000. That fiber line is old. We replaced what was going over to Public Works with Pictona the construction. We're concerned about what's going over to the fire department, so we're going to replace that line, and then the additional monies will then add a fiber connection up to the YMCA building.
So capital looks minimal, even though it's more than last year, it's very minimal. But operating is up 60 grand, and
40,000 of it is the phone system lease
okay.
that wasn't put in the original budget of this year.
Okay,
The
I got
new
you.
phone
So
system.
the amended 2020 budget will be higher than this figure.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Okay, and then we're on to the fleet fund, which is really kind of relatively flat. We have had some staffing changeover over there, so that part of the reason they kept it flat. And again, this has no external revenue sources. This is all internal revenue sources. Okay, a look ahead. Tonight, during the regular meeting, we'll be asking you to adopt the maximum millage rate and set the 2 public hearing dates. It must be done within 35 days of July 1st. We're suggesting the first public hearing on September 9th at 7 p.m. That's a Wednesday. And the final public hearing on September 21st, which is a Monday at 7 p.m. We did have some conflicts with the county and school board dates, is why we had to move the dates. And
Typically, we would move our September, it would be Tuesday, September 8th. We would move that to the Monday so that we're not in conflict with the school board on that first public hearing night. But because that is now Labor Day, that Monday, the 8th, so we'll push our meeting off till Wednesday, the 9th, Monday, the 7th. We'll push it off to Wednesday, the 9th. And then the second public hearing will be on the 21st of that month. So now's the point we'll take questions and talk about anything you might have after reviewing, if you had a chance to review the budget. But again, I'll remind you that each year I spend a lot of time jumping on my department heads to reduce and cut and go back to their budgets and try to minimize it as much as they can. And they've done that without me having a harp on them this year. So they were it took a very frugal approach to their budgets this year, knowing that we're in a tight economy. So I appreciate the work that they've all done in putting their budgets together. That being said, and again, I seem to have made my career out of saying no to people, but I'm used to that by now. They're not, but I am. So there's no waste in the budget, in my opinion. I think everything that's in here is monies set aside to provide the level of service that this commission has requested that the staff provide to the community. So there are some items in the capital budget where you might have some flexibility. So when we talk about the millage rate and the proposed millage on your regular agenda coming up, this budget was based on the current rate of 6.25. To go to the rollback rate or some version of it, and that's a political decision that you will have to make, if we do any reduction in that, the only place to look for modifications or reductions for the most part is in that capital budget. We've balanced the budget on the revenues, and we're using the fund balance for the capital. So if we do reduce the millage, we will in essence be almost jeopardizing the way we balance the budget on the revenues, because what we're cutting are revenues coming in, but what you're eliminating out of the budget are one-time expenses. So just keep that in mind. So we're okay for now. Do you remember what, at the end of this, what our fund balance would be in terms of percentage?
It's well over the 25%. I don't.
Okay, so we're in good shape there. But I just wanted to remind you of that, and we'll open it up for, Vice Mayor, you'll open it up for discussion.
Just one thing I want to remind us is that at a regular meeting, we will be setting the maximum millage rate, which Stella reminded us when we started the meeting. But one thing that I think is important is this commission is in place for at least the next 2 years. And we talked about having a goal-setting session. And I think it's important that, based on what Mr. Forte said, I would suggest that my recommendation for this commission is to keep the millage rate at the proposed millage rate, because if we go any lower tonight, that's the maximum we can go to. If we have a goal-setting workshop between now and September 9th or September 21st, when we set the actual millage rates, and we come up with an idea, like we always do as elected officials, that we want to add something to the budget or add something to our community, Mr. Forte is going to tell us, you set your maximum millage rate, you don't have any more money, I've already cut your capital projects to the bone, where do you want me to get the money? And as not being my first rodeo, someone's going to say, take it out of fund balance. Well, that's not the prudent thing for us to do. We're right in the middle of hurricane season. There's a tropical storm supposed to hit us Sunday. Hopefully it's not too bad, but that's what the fund balance is for. So my recommendation would be to try and steer this commission to go with the budget as proposed, unless you see something glaring in it that you find offensive or that you feel can be eliminated. But the things that we're going to need to eliminate are not the ongoing costs. It's the very short list of capital improvements that are scheduled for next year. And keep in mind that there may be other additional capital improvements that we may come up with at our goal-setting session. So,
Now, this is kind of a rerun. We did this last year,
right, but
almost word for word. I mean,
but if the goal of this commission, and Mr. Forte touched on it, it's a political issue to go to the current rate or go to the rollback or somewhere in between. That's a political decision that this body has to make. I don't believe it's fair to staff to let them leave here tonight and come back at a later date and just pick an arbitrary number and say, make it, 5.99, 6.19, whatever the number is. I think if there's something that you feel should be cut from this budget, we need to discuss it now in the workshop, hopefully. And if we don't have enough time in the workshop, we'll address it again during a regular city commission meeting. But to sit on our hands and not say, I don't agree with this project, let's don't re-roof that building, don't put that landscaping down, let's don't do this. I don't think it's fair for staff for us to sit here and not say that right now. So I'll shut up and we'll ask the mayor since he's on the phone. Any comments?
Hey, thank you, Vice Mayor. Yeah, I agree with you that I think in the goal-setting session, one thing that has to be present of mind of all of us is in respect to what in our goals will become ongoing expenses. Now, when we talk about one-time off projects, that's a little different, but in some of the goals that I'm preparing, I think that we should talk about the ramifications of the budget in future years. So I agree with you there. And I also agree that today here we're setting the maximum of what it is. Now, it's going to be no surprise to anybody that obviously I'm always for trying to lower our tax rate as much as we can, or more specifically, to not raise taxes on citizens and business owners through our millage rate. Every year we'll be able to find ways to make our departments better and find ways to spend money set on a current rate, which if valuations go up for people will then be considered a tax increase. And so I've just started to delve into the budget, but I just wanted to say that, and I'm going to have to go through even more, but I appreciate staff for putting everything together. I didn't catch all of what Mr. Forte was saying because it's a little hard to hear on the phone, and I apologize for that, for not being there. But, I'll have to listen back to hear all of the words that were said. But so that's what I'm saying tonight.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, he basically said the operating budget is to the bone, the capital budget is to the bone, and the only responsible thing to cut at this point is capital. So that's where he's leading us. He said it better than I did, but that's pretty much what he said.
I see what he's saying. I mean, just looking over the budget, it makes sense from what we have asked of our staff for the goals that we have let out and the policies that we've created. But remind you last year as well that staff did a great job to find more cost savings, and we ended up being able to take that millage rate down even further. But that's not tonight. Tonight is all about the maximum rate. And, unfortunately out there in the media, there's a lot of people that get the maximum rate really confused. There was a big article about Deltona that they're raising their taxes by 10%. Well, that's not the case. They set the maximum millage rate. And so a lot of people are confused, but we still have, after tonight, we still have 2 more readings with this. So thank you to staff for preparing this, Stella, Mr. Forte, all the department heads. We appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
The one thing I'll hopefully suggest to you that, and it sounds to me, sometimes I can't count to 5, or 4.
We only heard from 2.
I know. But it sounds to me like you might be heading in a direction to set the maximum millage at the current rate. But that being cover for both me and Stella and the department heads and you as a commission, knowing that it can go down but not go up. If the commission has intention of requesting us to reduce it from the current rate, I want to get that direction tonight, either during this work session or after the regular commission meeting. It's extremely difficult to present a budget to you at first reading in September, and at that meeting, the commission decide to reduce the millage, and now I've got a week to find cuts. So if we're setting the millage, the maximum millage potentially at the current rate, but it's the intention of the commission to request it to be lowered, it would only be fair to the staff to tell us as soon as possible what your intentions are so that we're prepared for it, and not that I've got a week to do it. So just put
I
that on
agree
the
with you,
table.
Joe. I think that, I don't know if we have, I don't think we have a goal-setting workshop set, but I think it'd be important to set the goal-setting workshop as soon as possible, and so that we could then get some direction. I know we can't take formal action, but we could then say, okay, well, we don't want to do this program, we want to do this program. And that program is an increase of $65,000 or a decrease of $35,000. Then that would give you enough time to take that direction and bring us back that point.
And we can do that. The mayor and I spoke about that because typically we wouldn't have a goal-setting work session until probably after the first of the year because you'd wait for the election to go through.
Right.
But we don't have to worry about that because all of our commissioners are being reseated. So because of that, we can have a work session at any time. So thrown into that mix, and this was shortly after qualifying ended, and I had the conversation with the mayor to have an earlier work session, that COVID is in place, and I had a commissioner that was out on medical leave, and I have another commissioner out on medical reason. So we have to have it where all of us are present, and so hopefully during the month of August, even if it's not on a commission night, and we talked about doing it on an off night and maybe even doing it earlier, we'll set that. And I think that's what I'm hearing is let's go ahead and get that work session set so we can verbalize these concerns and maybe get better direction on where we want the level of service set for this community.
Right, one of the most frustrating things that I've experienced is that we come up with this great idea, we unanimously approve it, we want to move forward. Well, there's no money. You can't do it until next October. And then the expectation is that, okay, we've come up with the idea, we've passed it, it's going to get started in the next 90 days, and it doesn't get started for another 13 months in the future. So I think it's important, and we are in a unique situation where this commission will be here in January. And
Well, we shouldn't short-sight the goal session to 1 year. We should really do a 5-year goals projection.
I concur.
And although it's not set in stone, it is a foundation for us to work off of and then either build upon or modify over the next couple of years, but at least you don't start from scratch each year.
Right. Mr. Daniel, what do you have to say?
I agree. Let's oh, sorry. Go ahead, Daniel.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead, Chris. Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
I was just going to say that I agree. I think that we should probably go ahead, and if we could schedule it now, that's good with me. I'm available starting all next week to be able to meet in person, so just so everyone knows. And I'll touch on that later tonight at the commission meeting. But I think that it's imperative that we get our minds together, we see where the city is headed and where our goals are. So.
Okay, Mr. Daniel.
Danio is all about, it's, for me, there's no political involvement. It's about being prudent and being responsible. And we did this last year and we had the same outcome. We just, we can't do anything that's unreasonable. So I'm not in favor of doing anything except keeping it the same. And the staff's done a good job doing their homework. So there's no reason to do anything else. I'm okay with leaving it the same as well.
Okay, Mr. Johnson.
Well, kind of the way that I look at it is, if we set the rate, say 6.25, we're not setting it at 6.25. We just say we're not going to go any higher than 6.25. Okay, now you say that the rate would be the same, but the property values have gone up, right? But now that doesn't necessarily mean that anybody that has property is going to be paying more taxes because maybe their property value didn't go up. That's overall property value, including what's added to the city property, right?
That's
So they could be
correct.
built new houses, new businesses, new things, so that'll increase it up to the property value. But that doesn't necessarily mean that anybody's going to get a tax increase any whatsoever if we keep the millage rate the same. See, I probably pay more taxes than anybody in this room in Holly Hill. And I know that my tax, as far as I know, they haven't set a value on my property that's higher than it was before, so I shouldn't have to pay any more tax rate. I don't get a homestead exemption, and I'm sure the ones that have $50,000 or less will still not be paying any taxes, you know? So I really believe that it matters not there anyway, because they're not actually gonna be getting a tax increase, they're gonna be paying the same taxes. It's just that if they have to realize the whole overall property value of the city went up, and that includes all the increase of any property that we gained in Holly Hill. So I think you're probably on the right track. We could set the max, and the max should stay the same. I don't think you should go with the 6 1/4 it should be anyway. And then if something comes up, you say you can take something off the capital budget, which is like a nickel and dime capital budget this year. I don't think you will. It's probably gonna wind up being that, but nobody will get a tax increase anyhow, is the way I look at it.
Well, some will receive a tax increase. Not everyone will see it. Some will receive a decrease.
But as we went through this last year, some people will pay $2 a month,
Well, if you
$1. Yeah, that's what I said on
Look
the
at
chart earlier, you had it
spreadsheet
all
that
there.
Stella gave us. Many of those are not double digit. It's
No, the irony is that the 3 business owners are probably gonna end up paying the worst of an increase, and yet we're in favor of keeping it the same.
right.
So, I mean, that speaks volumes right
I'm in
there.
favor of a tax increase, believe me.
We're gonna end up paying more, but it's not what's in our, our responsibility is to the city when we're sitting here. It's not to our business,
I pay more than
Right.
$1,000 a month every month in all of
so.
So what do we do now, Joe? We got 1 minute left.
If there's any other questions, I know some of you may have not had an opportunity to look at all the detail in the budget book, but it's in there, it's thorough. Stella did a great job at organizing it and in your front page color coordinating it, and I think that was
And the
probably
pages
more.
are numbered.
This year, good job, Stella.
Color coordination was probably more for my benefit than anyone else, but I'm sure it helped everybody. But if you have any questions, we'll address it. If not, if you have any questions after the meeting, you can certainly call me or Stella, and of course, my department heads are open to your questions. If you have anything specific at the department, feel free to contact them directly. That's about it.
Any questions? Any comments?
Thank you.
Thank you, staff.
Thank
We're
you.
going to take a 5-minute recess. 7 o'clock. We'll reconvene at 7:05.